Hey guys, welcome back to the garage, and on this episode I'm going to be dealing with the problem areas that I've found with this bonnet. Now, I know that it might not come up on camera, but just so you're aware, it's not so much here, but more here. Yeah. You know, in any normal circumstance, this bonnet would probably definitely end up in a scrap bin. That's not going to be an option for me in Australia. There is no chance of me actually getting my hands on another bonnet locally. There's just no chance. So obviously I've looked in the States as to what they're worth and if I could get one shipped over, but logistically it's just more of a pain to do that. I originally wanted to just get a twin air ram scoop. That was an option back for these cars back in the day, but same thing, by the time it gets shipped out of wherever it's getting made, which I've heard some horror stories of up to 6 months for those bonnets to be received by the customer in America. So, you know, getting it shipped across, I'm sure I'm going to be dealing with damage, essentially. So I'm going to be repairing that bonnet anyway. So I'm just going to go with trying to fix this one. Now, when I say fix, we're not going to go to town on this. I'm going to try and cheat a lot with this. I do have the luxury of this car not being a show car by any means, but I just want something that is somewhat straight, somewhat okay. You know, I'm fine with creases and stuff like that in it. You know, the rest of the car looks the same, as you know. So I'm going to try and cheat a little bit here. You know, this is not a resto bonnet, episode. We're not going to be de-skinning it and sandblasting it and doing all that stuff. I'm going to try and cheat as much as possible. So if I can actually whack all this straight without de-skinning it, happy days. I know I'm going to have to put some sort of structure in there to get that strength back in that framework, but you know, I'm also going to compensate that with, you know, taking some tension out of the springs and then probably, you know, trying to form some way of keeping the bonnet up with a pin or something like that in the hinge, you know, so we don't have any tension really on the hinge points. So let's see where we can go. Hopefully we don't have to de-skin it, and even if I do, I'm only going to probably de-skin it sort of halfway in and just be able to separate it. I don't want to get up into the front end of this bonnet. I've had a look at the hardware up there, and that's going to get me into a lot of hours in trying to repair that stuff if it all starts snapping and carrying on. So I want to try and stay away from it. So I'll delve into it now and just see where we go with it. So there seems to be a lot of firsts for me on this car. Now, it's not the first time I've repaired a bonnet, but it is the first time that I've actually repaired a bonnet this bad. But I do have the luxury of it not being a show car, as I said. So my thought process is going through doing it as quickly and as easily as I possibly can. So we're going to be putting a scoop on it, so the center part of this bonnet is going to be cut out. But I want to stay away from that at this moment. So what I'm thinking is of cutting the inner frame across the center so we can stay away from the front portion of this bonnet. Like I said, I don't want to get into this. It's going to be hundreds of hours of work de-skinning it properly and all that sort of stuff. So we're going to cheat a little bit. So I know a lot of you guys are probably going to cringe about how this has been done. And I know a lot of you guys will probably do the exact same stuff. So what I'm going to do is just that. We're going to cut the inner frame across the center, de-skin it up until that point. We're going to repair the framework and the skin, get them back together, get them as good as I can. Obviously, there's still going to be dents and stuff in the frame and the skin. But as I said, I just want to get the bonnet straight so it looks good on the car. Straight enough, and then we'll do the scoop. And the reason for that is that if I do the scoop as well in the same time, we're probably going to be cutting out or cutting in some tension on that skin itself. With all that damage, it probably will start deforming on me if I take some of the integrity out of the center. So I'd rather get it fixed to a certain point and then we'll deal with cutting out this center portion. So I think that's what I'm going to do. We're going to cheat. We're going to cut the rear portion off, fix it all up, put it back together, re-weld it. Happy days. So what I'm going to do is pull back this skin. It's just simply wrapped around. Now, lucky for me on this bonnet, they've only got very bare minimal spot welds in there. There's one here and there's nothing till right here. So kind of lucky in a way. There's only about 6 spot welds we've got to deal with around the bottom half of this skin. So I've bought a spot weld remover, if we'll get a look at that. So it's just a weird sort of cut flat drill bit that has a little point in the center of it. And as long as you keep it flat on the panel, it should only take out the backside of that return where the spot weld is and cut that spot weld off, and then we'll bend the panel out and get this inner structure out. You just got to be careful not to go too far with it. Now really the next step is probably going to be easier on this bonnet than most bonnets, just because of the lack of spot welds that we've got. But really all you have to do is get underneath that return on the bonnet skin and roll it back over. So the easiest way to do it is just to get a chisel, a little wood chisel, you know, something you don't want to really use on anything else because you will dull it right off, and get underneath there and just roll it up a bit, because there's still another step to do. So what you don't want to do is get too greedy and try and start rolling that edge back up straight, because what you'll do is you'll get bad inconsistency in it and how much pressure you put on it. So it's just a little bit at a time, but just keep the consistency as you're going. So only do a little bit, then come back and then do it again and do it again and do it again. Don't force it over in one spot, because you'll have it just warp the whole way. Then just go back over it and slowly pry it evenly. Don't do too much at one time. So that portion's done. Got that skin bent away from the inner frame. That'll actually pop out now. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it now and just get this rear portion out. The only problem I came across is because of the damage that was done, it put a lot of strain on this skin, and it's actually split it, as you can see through here. So we're going to have to, when we fold this back around, we're just going to have to go along and spot weld this and grind it down and make it all smooth again. But other than that, it was actually a really easy bonnet to de-skin. It makes me wonder if I should get up in there, but no, I'm not going to do that. We're going to cheat. So get this cut now and get this frame off. Now, as you can see there, that's the structure that I was talking about, that we're going to have to weld another brace in to give it strength. They've just bent it right through, so this has lost all its integrity, but it's got the nutserts that we need to mount the bonnet, so we'll just straighten it out and weld something in it, along it somewhere, and make it strong. So now that one little crack has turned into the whole thing is cracked. Great, more work, but you know, that's the problem. That's why I don't want to start digging into that top end. I'm just going to create more work for myself, but yeah, I'll just get that out of the way. As you can see there, we've sort of got its shape back. It doesn't take much just to smack those creases flat and put some tension in the right places. But yeah, it's got its strength back. It's not oil tinning like it was before. So I don't want it perfect. I know we're going to have still creases looking in the bonnet. You know, I'll clean them up a little bit. We'll put a little bit of filler on there to try and sort of even it out a bit. There's also a line that's running through here that's not, I'm not going to be able to get that back out by just smacking it. I don't have the skill to do that, but so far so good. It's the other side's done the same thing. It's broken away, but we'll deal with that. So yeah, no, I'm pretty happy with that. And also went ahead and just started whacking this down with a hammer. Now I thought it would have been, I was just quickly looking at it, I should have known it was spot welded in there, but I don't really want to go ahead and get those spot welds out. I'll deal with all the cracks, weld up all the cracks in there. I will try and get the hammer and dolly in there and try and get this straightened out a bit, but not that it's picking up well on camera. That's actually back to the way it should be. I know it's sort of sitting up a bit, but you've got to remember the bonnet is going to be bowed for the top of the car, so it's bowed out the other way. That's essentially where it needs to be, so I'm going to get in here and start repairing these cracks and put some more bracing back in it so it doesn't just fold again. Righto, so one of the problems I knew I was going to run into was that cutting this inner framework was going to leave me with a problem where essentially we're going to have to try and get the bonnet back to where it was. I knew I was going to do that. I'm not overly worried because the amount of structural damage to this frame anyway, it is just all over the shop. So I can't be entirely sure if when I weld it back together, if I just fully welded it and started putting it back together, I could get it back on the car and find out that it's got a big hump or it's got it's slumping down too much. So I'm going to just tack it together, try and get the bonnet to a point where we can get it back on the car and just quickly test fit it. I don't have to put the hinges on. I'm just going to sit it in between the guards and just see if that framework really is where it needs to be. a lot of this is going to disappear. Our scoop is actually coming right out past this. So all this inner structure is going to be cut out anyway. So there will be a chance that once we get it welded, I mean, this is really the only main structure that's going to be running there. So we could essentially just bend it either way once we got it in that position. But I just want to quickly test fit it and see if it, you know, is good enough. I don't want to just weld it all together and then find out we've got a, you know, big banana in it that we don't need. Well, for 2 hours worth of work, I think that's a pretty good result. Pretty happy with that. There's still a twist in the bonnet from front to back. We've still got a bit of a twist, but I'm sure that I can just tweak that out of it once we get it on its hinges, so I'm not too concerned about that. As I said, I'm not getting all these creases out. We're not going for all the dents. This car's got dents and all sorts of stuff all over it, so I'm going to leave it that way. So I'm pretty happy with minimal work. We've got that fairly good. So I've taken the bonnet ornament off because it's going to actually interfere with our scoop. So that's going to be our next thing. I've marked it up in the corners that you probably can't see where the line of the center point of the carb is. So I want to try and line that up as best as possible on its outer radius with that line, so it does come forward and interfere with this. So this is going to be interesting getting this scoop. This scoop is all over the shop. It's not the best fiberglass mold I've seen, but we're just going to have to work with it. It's going to take a little bit, but I think I'm going to be taking a lot of this off and just trying to get it to the same shape as the actual bonnet before we start molding it in. But let's see how we go. I'll start marking that up and we'll get a hole cut in it. Until that's actually finished. That's starting to look really good. So to be honest, I'm not really sure on how to actually do this properly, but I've just roughed up the gel coat around the edge, roughed up all the panel with a flapper disc just to try and get some bite with the fiberglass. So right now I'm going to cut some strips of actual fiber and use some resin and get that in first, and then I've got actually fiberglass filler that we can go over it with. But theory is that maybe the resin's going to sort of get underneath and get into all the cracks and help sort of bond it more than the actual fiberglass filler. It's going to leave sort of air gaps and things like that. So that's my theory. I'm going to go with it. So let's start doing some fiberglass work. moment's finally here. I'm hoping I can close this bonnet without too many dramas. I'm hoping it fits. This is the first time it's been really back on the car with the hinges and everything like that, so it was a bit of a struggle getting it on, but I'm just going to wing it, see if it's in the right spot, and we'll just keep adjusting and adjusting until hopefully we can make it look all right. Miles off. Alright, so it's got to go that way. So I think we go down on that side maybe. Let's see how far back that is. Oh no, definitely it's got to go back that way. Alright. Probably too far, but we'll just see where that lands. Already looks like it's too far over that way. Alright. It's like the whole thing needs to slide that way. I think that these hinges, and we're just going to have to tweak it in the hinges. Should probably tighten up that side too. Still not there. What is going on? This side looks like it's got a pretty, it's a big gap, but it's a consistent gap. I think it might be that I've mounted the guard too far inwards, if that makes sense. I might be able to undo this guard and actually just pull this guard back a little bit for that to shut, but it's not the best. Not the best at all. The only thing I haven't got is the bonnet stabilizer on this side. I think that's really the reason why that's sort of sitting down too much, but we all know the real reason. This bonnet's still screwed. Well, I'll get into a bit more tweaking. I'm not going to bother you with a half-hour video of me just tweaking this bonnet in, and once I get it all straight, I'll check it back in. Yeah, right, like I can see up there. I can sort of see this side because obviously the head's back further on this side, but I think all it's doing is just touching that vent tube. It's nowhere near it. I'm surprised, to be honest. I really wasn't holding my breath on that actually clearing properly with that spacer on it. So that's good. Don't have to worry about it. And you got to remember too, with those ducting hoses, it doesn't matter if it wears through because the filter's on top of the carburetor anyway. They're just air ducts. So I think we'll just run it and see what happens. If they tear and open up, maybe we'll just have to address it at that point. But I'm sort of happy. I'm happier to run that larger spacer for that airspeed that we're trying to chase for this motor. So I'd rather stick with that. And then that way too, we don't have to mess around cutting down those studs and then, you know, having to change them if we change our mind. But I'm just going to go with that. I'm pretty happy. Now, as you can see, this is a brighter colour than this. What I'm probably going to have to do is just come back over this primer and just sort of blend it in a little bit. There's every chance that it's just going to go straight to this colour and I don't really need to do it, but because I've been working on it so much, I've probably put a little bit more damage than I really want to put on the guards. I don't really care too much, but I think the main thing is just to make this bonnet blend in properly with this. So, you know, might just give it a couple of weeks, see how this bonnet sort of reacts. I'm assuming it is going to go straight to this sort of more yellower white. But yeah, you know, as I said, same thing with the tubs. It's not perfect, but neither is the rest of the car. And this is what I'm talking about. All this stuff I've left on the car. We've got grinding marks. We've got dings all down the side of it. All this, you know, none of this really matches properly. So I've left on the bonnet, like where the paint has come off, to essentially make it look like it is part of the car. I don't want to make it good because it isn't going to match the car. And as you can see on this guard, you can see how dinged up it is. So, you know, it was just a beater drag car, and then that's the way I want to keep it. I really like that look. Plus, we don't have to worry about banging it up ourselves. You can lean on it, you can throw tools on it, it really doesn't matter. So, as you can see, that bonnet line is pretty consistent. It is sitting up a little bit here, but I know that, you know, we can sort of just bend that out because, you know, we don't have to really worry about, you know, putting dents in the bonnet or anything like that. So I'll try and get it as good as I can, but I'm not chasing that perfect look. As I keep saying, I'm really not trying to chase that perfect look. So as long, you know, we get the bonnet stays in the front to try and get rid of the drop in that, because it's sitting up high on this side. And I reckon that'd be good. Another job done. Well, I know we're not shooting for the stars when we're going for quality. I'm trying to get this bonnet going, but I'm pretty happy. I'm happy that we've gotten, you know, essentially what I would throw that bonnet straight in the bin if I had the chance to be able to get my hands on another bonnet. So I'm happy with the result. I'm happy with the shape of it. You know, there's a bit to be desired, but it's still that struggle of trying to make it perfect and just accept how unperfect this car is. So there's a fine line there, but you know, I'm learning to walk away from the stuff like that. So I am real happy. You know, when in regards to touching these ducting pipes, now this is like a foil. Now, it is just touching. It's literally just touching it as the bonnet goes down. It's just these supports. So you wouldn't think that that'd be an issue, but it will be an issue. This engine's shaking. It's just going to tear these. So we're going to have to just put a small spacer in there. I don't think it's a big deal. Like, you know, I've got that spacer. That's why I'm trying to run that spacer. But I think we need to take probably, you know, 3/4 to half of that spacer out of you know, underneath that carby. I think aesthetically it's going to actually look a little bit better, because the more I stare at this, this kind of looks a little goofy, like it's like almost too high. But I definitely want to run a spacer no matter what. I want to be able to insulate that carburetor, and it's good for airspeed. So it really does pick up that airspeed pulling through the carburetor. So not a big deal, but it's definitely going to be a big deal if we leave it this way and it just keeps rubbing through these hoses. I don't want to be chasing this sort of stuff. I just want it to clear, and as long as we've got some clearance, it shouldn't be an issue. So the next things I'm probably going to deal with is trying to you know, get the exhaust done. We got the headers back, and I'm building the entire exhaust myself out the back, so get all that buttoned up, and I want to try and get the rest of this engine buttoned up. So that is going to lead me towards getting the wiring done, because I want to get the wiring done before we put the interior in. I've essentially got all the interior. We've got carpet sitting up there, you know, we've got the seats, we've got some seat belts we need to put in, things like that. There's not a great deal. I've still got to make some panels in the back. Next to the rear seat, there's panels missing, so I'm just going to have to try and make something fit in there, and a parcel shelf, and you know, things of that nature. But essentially there's not much that goes into the interior. Yeah, it's going to take a few days to get it all together, but I want to get that wiring done first, because I don't want all the shrapnel and wires, you know, getting into the carpet, things like that. So I'll be buttoning up this engine. I've got rocker covers that we need to fit. I know you can see that there are two different styles of rocker covers. We're running those billet ones because they've got breathers in them. I want to run a breather system on this. I don't like that vent to atmosphere straight away stuff. I want to be able to put it through a catch can. And I've had the rockers off to essentially get the headers in. I've just started doing those headers. So I need the clearance to get my hand in there to get the bolts in there. So I want to button up this engine. I want to have belts on it. I want to get plug wires done. All this stuff's just sitting there, and these are all random too. They're being covered. One's a red one, and there's a black one in there. So we'll get new leads. Get the fuel system done. Get water in it. Hasn't got a belt on the alternator. Plug up. There's a barb fitting in the back of the manifold for a booster. We're obviously not running a booster, so it's just little things like that I'm going to have to check off and get done. Put some water in it, and you know, just get it to a point where we can run it, and then I want to try and attack some of that wiring and get all that done. So essentially we'll be able to hear it running. So that'll be a big moment. That will really be a big moment. Once I hear this thing running, it's going to put a lot of steam in how fast we get this thing done. I can tell you that, because we're getting close. We are getting close. There's still a lot of stuff we're going to do, but you know, still, you know, we're going to have to take it down to the dyno, make sure this engine's going to be right. You know, especially with new carby, new spacer, all that sort of stuff on it, an air cleaner. It's going to be a completely different engine running, so we won't be able to do anything other than sort of hear it idle. But yeah, we'll have to take it off down to the dyno. So, you know, it might be one of those things where once the wiring's done, and you know, I might do some glass, things like that. I don't know. I like to just do things wherever it sort of fits in. It's also got to fit in with other guys. So I've got steering stuff to do. We've got glass to put in it. So it also comes down to those guys. They might be free, and we just drag it down there and get those things done. So, but definitely pipes all the way out to the back, engine buttoned up, and we'll start on the wiring. So we're not far from hearing it running. So I'm getting real eager. I hope you guys are. So I hope you liked that episode, guys. If you did, please like, please subscribe, and we'll definitely see you in the next one.